official lathe is back on its legs, the motor has been reinstalled, and I am more or less ready to take my first cut with this old machine made in the Second World War. There are still lots of problems, but I'm anxious to try it out. Based on the test results, I will make my decision if I want to keep this machine and start fixing it up. I must say that I've already found a serious problem that will play a big part in my decision making. More about that later. For now, I think we should start with a facing cut. I've got a test piece mounted in what could be described as the world's worst chuck, with its welded up and reground jaws, mangled up backing plate and broken chuck key. I don't think this will have a positive effect on the outcome of this test. But it's the only chuck I've got that fits this lathe. And there are bigger problems to worry about. Just for fun, let's test the runout. A bit more than 2/10 of a millimeter, and that's actually less than I expected. I managed to free up the crosslight, and I found the worst looking Acme nut ever. There's at least 1.5 turn backlash in here. Somebody did an awful job making this thing. It doesn't even fit the mounting hole on the back of the crosslight. The mounting hole was, by the way, drilled out for some reason. So I'm not going to use the crosslight. I will just tighten up the gib and use the compound slide instead. I was going to use this homemade tool holder, but the bit I was planning to use sits above center height in this thing. It is also not completely flush with the top of the compound slide. So that one is out. Luckily the lathe also came with this holder, but this is not original for this lathe. I had to drill out a hole in order to make it fit. But at least with this holder I am below center height and should be able to adjust the tool to the correct height. I'm going to use this old Soviet cutting tool that came with the lathe. I think it's a bit weird looking with its pentagram insert and what looks like a spacer underneath the insert. It also has a lot of negative rake. High-speed steel would probably cut better, but I'm curious about this thing. Well, I'm ready to take my first cut. I will be running at about 250 RPM. At the higher speed setting the belt starts to slip, and there is no way I can tighten up the belt. I decided to try and turn a point on this test piece. Doing a face-off cut would be difficult because then I would need to line up the compound. Put a bit of oil on here. And the belt starts to slip. I tried roughing up the belt with a steel brush. Maybe that helps. I don't think it helps. And the belt ran off. That's a shame. Now I'm going to show you the biggest problem I've found so far. If you've seen my previous video about this lathe, you might remember that the tailstock had quite a bit of offset. So much offset that it's hitting the carriage. So I turned it back. Now there's no indicator here, so I'm assuming that this is the default setting, where the base and the tailstock are nicely aligned. Well, that's not even close. So clearly the tailstock offset was to compensate for misalignment issues. And I think the problem is in the mounting of the headstock. So here you can see the headstock isn't sitting on the V-ways. It is mounted to the bed with this clamp, and it looks to me that there is no room for the headstock to move sideways. It is tight against the bed at both sides. The clamp, however, does have a slotted hole, so it is clearly designed for some sideways movement. This is the rear of the headstock, and you can see that there is some mechanism here to pivot the head. So the rear can be adjusted, but the front can't. And I wonder if I can adjust the rear enough to bring things back in alignment. There is something going on here, because I had a look underneath with a mirror, and it looks like they welded two clamps together, and I can't figure out why. Looking at the side, it doesn't look like the head is mounted at an angle. So if the front can't be adjusted and the back can, why didn't they line everything up? Why is there so much offset on the tailstock? I'm thinking this bed or this headstock might not belong together, because I've seen similar lathes on the internet that look very much alike. Without a proper chock and measurement tools and testing bars, it will be very hard to get this machine back into alignment. This problem might be a showstopper for me. Also, my list of things that are wrong with this machine is growing every day. So I think I will put it in a corner and start working on that little blue Kerger lathe again. And here is one more item that also came with the lathe, and I forgot to show you in the other video. I'm pretty sure it doesn't belong with the lathe, but I do wonder what it is. Something can be clamped down here with these bolts. There's a holder there for some kind of bar, but I don't think it's a boring bar because of the angles. I really don't know.